Welcome to Face the State. I'm Ariana Bennett. Thank you for joining us. Well, at the beginning of this year, a group of community organizers did a survey trying to find out how many homeless youth we have in Washoe County, where they're sleeping, and how they became that way. It's just part of a larger effort to get these people help and resources. Michelle Gear with the Eddy House and Monica Dupé with the Nevada Youth Empowerment Project are both here to talk about all these efforts. Thank you both so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so one thing that really struck me when I heard you guys talking about this youth pit count is that dealing with the young people, this population, this under 25 population, is very different from dealing with the typical adult homeless population that we normally think of, right?
Absolutely. Homeless youth are homeless for different reasons than adults. So with the youth, you see less substance abuse, less alcoholism, mental illness that hasn't fully reached its potential. The longer they're out on the street, the more issues you see. But they're homeless for different reasons. A lot of times it's from downsizing, a lot of times it's from coming out of the foster care system or other systems. And so you really have an opportunity. Once they're over the age of 25, the problems become more severe and it becomes more lifelong.
And then if you can get to them earlier on, right, there's a much greater chance of success.
The data shows if you intervene before the age of 25, 85% do not become homeless again. So it's an opportunity.
Wow, that's a lot of people, because we see in the typical homeless population that there are challenges there because, you know, I don't know if the word is recidivism, but it's the same kind of idea where a lot of times it's hard for them to maintain a life and they revert back to homelessness. But you say 85%?
85%.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so really this is a solvable issue.
It is in Reno. We're not New York or San Francisco or Boston. You know, we have less than 1,000 homeless youth on our streets. That is a fixable problem. More people attend the beer crawls downtown than homeless youth on the street. So we can fix it, and I think it will take the community to do so.
Okay, so one big step obviously is kind of just getting the numbers in and talking to these people and finding out more about them, and that's what the pit count is for. So tell me what that was like.
24 hours of chaos. I mean, it's a pretty chaotic event because you're having a mass amount of people come in for the donations that we're giving out to them. So like the backpacks, the sleeping bags, the food, whatever they're coming in for to grab and to complete the survey. And so I know that it definitely changed things at the Eddy House for a 24-hour period because we did move the count this year from the West Street Plaza, which is downtown Reno by the river, over to the Eddy House in hopes of highlighting the need for the Eddy House and also showing young people that maybe don't know where it's at. So I know that it was a pretty tense 24 hours just with the volume, the amount of volunteers, the amount of people that were coming in. It's pretty crazy, and it's such a small building, a small space.
But it's important to talk to these people, right? Because that's kind of how we get the baseline, or is that what it's for? Absolutely.
The point in time count. So the Eddy House collects data on all of the kids that walk in the door every single day, and so they keep really good data over there. But the HUD, Housing and Urban Development, requires that communities do a point in time count, and it's generally during a very cold time of the year. We do ours the last week of January. We take turns with Vegas determining what day that's going to be. It's usually the Thursday, and they use that data to determine HUD funding. And so it's important that we have a true show out on the day that we do the count, because HUD doesn't really consider other counts or other information that we're gathering when they make those funding determinations.
Okay, and I understand you can only speak to a small portion of the population. I mean, there were about 100 kids you talked to this year?
104 were surveyed at the Eddy House during the period of time, which is the most that we've ever surveyed in the 7 years that we've been conducting the count for the city of Reno. So is kind of piggybacking on what Michelle just had said earlier, you know, these numbers are not going down. When we were talking earlier, these numbers are increasing every year, and that should be an alarm to us, because youth homelessness is our opportunity to prevent chronic homelessness. And if we're not up in the front of that, it really is alarming to me of what could occur year after year in Reno.
So looking at the results now, were there any numbers that jumped out at you, anything that was particularly surprising in this year's count?
I think that one of the things that the story is telling me is that we may not have a significant amount of young people who are homeless every single night. But what we do is we have a significant amount of young people that are experiencing housing instability in Reno. I know that UNR even did a little pilot study of 128 students in October, and 10% of those students had experienced homelessness in the last year. This problem is pervasive through youth. It's happening across the entire nation right now. And it's difficult because with the adult population, you wait until they're homeless to intervene and help them. With youth, we don't actually want them to become homeless before we're intervening and helping. So if we have young people that maybe had a couch to sleep on last night, but they're walking into the Eddie house, that is an indicator that they're saying, hey, I need help. I don't have enough resources. I don't have enough support to do this on my own. And when we have a substantial amount of kids, 104 that went into a drop-in center in a 24-hour period saying, I don't have enough resources to make it in this community on my own, that is really alarming to me.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's definitely a story that we're hearing a lot, that people, especially with the increasing cost of living in our area, increasingly can't afford an apartment. And I noticed in the numbers that a significant portion of these people just can't afford their rent or had a recent rent increase that they couldn't afford.
Well, that's the disturbing thing. So we're seeing a 20,000 unit shortage in northern Nevada. And median rent now for a one bedroom is over $1,000 a month. If you're underemployed or part-time employed, you cannot afford to pay that rent. And so these kids are being pushed out, and they're sleeping in weekly motels, sometimes 14 or 15 to a room. This is a big deal in our community. There's no place for them to go. And so they can't survive, and so they're living on the streets.
Even a full-time minimum wage job only pays about $18,000 a year. Chapin Hall says that if you make under $24,000 a year as a young person, you're at 126% chance of homelessness. So just the fact that our community is not keeping up with the wages, there are other factors that are contributing to homelessness, not just maybe their unwillingness to participate in a program or their unwillingness to commit to a workforce development project, but we have other factors in the community that are going on that are beyond these young people's control that's contributing to the outcome of them becoming homeless in our community. Also, if you don't have a high school diploma, you have a 346% chance of becoming homeless. So lowering our curriculums, freebeing out high school diplomas to kids, or that is not helping them either, because they really need to be earning these educations. I believe it's close to 51% of the new jobs that are coming into the community require a high school diploma or higher. We need to know that when we're working with youth to make sure that we're getting the right youth to the pipelines of those opportunities, and that we're developing out the other youth to meet those opportunities at some point down the line.
And this is an issue with our population. About 60% need a high school diploma or high school equivalency. About 70% had an IEP or special education plan while they were in school. These are local kids that we're seeing at Eddie House. So 71% are from Washoe County, 8% are from rural Nevada, so this is a Nevada issue. We know that there's approximately 50,000 individuals in Washoe County alone that do not have a high school diploma. We need to change that because the economy here is changing, and it's affecting our kids.
Probably difficult for them to get those diplomas because a lot of them are dealing with violence in the home. I mean, I think I saw it was 45% had violence in their home, and 36% had violence directed at them. So, I mean, how are kids like that supposed to fulfill an education? That's just a tough situation.
Well, it's 71% of Eddie House kids say that they're safer living on the street than they were in their home. We don't have the social services to support those families. We're seeing an increase in domestic violence. We're seeing a lot of stressors, usually economic stressors, that are contributing to the violence in the home. And so you have kids that are being pushed out before they're ready. They don't have the social skills. Everything we do at Eddie House has a social and emotional learning component to it. We start with basic soft skills, so eye contact, handshaking, and a conversation with an adult. If you're trauma affected, which 100% of our youth are trauma affected, how are you supposed to engage with an employer or coworkers? If you're not sleeping at night and you're wandering around and you're unsafe, 100% of our kids say that they have been sexually or physically assaulted on the streets of downtown Reno at least once a week. So if that is happening on our streets, how are you supposed to hold a job? if you've been up for 3 days and you haven't had a shower and you've been had violence committed on you. It's an impossible situation.
Yeah, really, it's horrifying to hear for so many reasons. I mean, this statistic too, I thought was kind of scary. 46% of them say they've either been pregnant or gotten someone pregnant, and less than half of them are using birth control. And is that an access issue or an affordability issue?
It's many different factors, and so it would be equally access to them saying, I don't like to use birth control, I'm abstinent right now, and then all of a sudden one night they're not abstinent. Just poor planning, not really thinking about putting the structures that we kind of have in our life that keep our lives organized. Their frontal part of their brain isn't developed in that way to really have an appreciation for those types of structures that kind of help us avoid just letting life happen to us, but be more of a planner and more in charge of what we can be in charge of as far as what's happening in our lives. Chapin Hall also reported that if you are parenting a homeless young person, you have a 200% chance of maintaining that homelessness and continuing to be homeless, and falling into those situations. And so these are all big red flags for us that we have a lot of programming that we need to create in Reno. We have a lot of things that we need to do to start addressing the information that this data is revealing to us. Homeless young people are not homeless for the same reasons that homeless adults are. And if you talk to them individually, you'll see that their stories are so different from one another. And a lot of reasons why they're homeless is beyond their control.
Yeah, okay. Now, this is a very dire picture, obviously a big problem that needs solving, but there are some solutions, and I want to get to that in the second half of the show today. But before we go to break, I have to wonder, is this a problem that is particularly bad here, or is this something we're seeing nationwide?
I think that it is a problem nationwide, but Reno in particular has seen a huge increase in the last 2 years. So in 2017, Eddie House provided services to 769 individual youth. In 2016, that number was 504. In 2015, it was less than 200. So as we see the housing shortage, as we see more social issues in the community, we're seeing an increase of homeless youth. Eddie House sees 40 new kids to the street every single month. That is unacceptable in this community. This is a community problem, and I don't think people are aware that it's happening here. I think they think of it as a big city problem. We have a big city problem. Nevada now has the fastest growing homeless youth population in the country, and we're #2 in the nation per capita for trafficking.
Wow. Okay. You two, sit tight. We got more to talk about, but coming up on Face the State, we will be back to talk solutions with these two guests. Stay with us.